there was one guy I was dealing with getting a little bit pissy over the kid interrupting the call thing, and I'm like, appreciate.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, please. Yeah.
My bad. Please continue. It's very alliterative.
They are going to be the ones powering the experiences that every customer has.
Preference has power. I'm pretty sure Kato would say to me when I do every show, stop.
I think he would.
Those peeps are popping. Wait till you get the invoice.
Here. I have a question. When's the last time you danced? When's the last time you laughed?
Right now. I don't want to dance with you.
When's the last time you flew a kite?
Toasted Oreo.
Look at you. You are insane.
How did I do that?
You're insane.
I am insane. I am here in South Africa, in Cape Town, in the dining room that I grew up in. I hope you know this is not a green screen. This is my dining room. And even though my mom says she's watching, she's literally next door, and she will make her debut on the show this week. I'm telling you, she will make it. If I have to drag her in here kicking and screaming, she thinks she's safe next door, but she's not. In fact, maybe we'll move around the house. Look, I do not want to tempt fate here because so far, so good. I'm in Africa. They have load shedding here. I'm expecting the power to go out. I'm expecting, I cannot believe the quality is so good. I don't feel as good as the quality suggests I should feel, because I think I ended up traveling for about 30 hours, with a mask on. I mean, I kind of got a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of what our frontline workers have had to deal with, wearing protective gear, and all I was wearing was a stupid mask. But just more and more respect for them to have had to have covered their face and covered their breathing for so long. Mr. David Libby is watching, and Tom Morris says, "Hi, Natalie, want to see you." We all do. You are far, far and away, but Tom, you are with me in my heart. You know that. Well, we have got a great show, more on my trip and everything. By the way, go to my Instagram, JAFFE Juice. I am trying to actually create a real tapestry of my time here. So trying to log as many different clips and sound bites and videos and photos as I can. Hello, Mr. Steve Garfield from Boston. Hello from Cape Town, Mr. Steve Garfield. And by the way, one of the things I'm doing as well, I chose to go back to basics, to keep it simple, stupid. It's actually a theme that we're going to be discussing today, because this is just my MacBook. I'm using my MacBook speaker, I'm using my MacBook microphone, I'm using my MacBook camera. I didn't want to overcomplicate. I just wanted to get back to basics. But anyway, today is 2 different color shoes day. So I hope you are wearing 2 different colored shoes. I'm still not wearing shoes. I don't think I've been wearing shoes for the last year and a half. But this idea of mixing and matching, I think is kind of indicative of what it is to be a rainbow nation. This is my homeland. This is my country, South Africa. It is a rainbow nation. This is a photograph actually from the plane. I'm not sure exactly. I think it might be Cape Point, where the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean meet. But I wanted to share that photo with you. I wanted to share the tapestry of my nation, but also the tapestry that is my guest this week. My 4 guests this week, Adam Pierno, DC Crenshaw, Kate O'Neill, and Andy Henriquez. Cannot wait to have conversations with you. Me here, you there, but most importantly, Adam is here with us tonight. It's today where you are. Well, it's tonight where you are. You know what I mean. I'm so mixed up. Adam is a speaker. He's a marketing strategist. He's a professor. He's an author. He's written fiction and nonfiction, and we're just going to talk about everything and more in just a few moments. One of the things we probably won't be talking about soon is my fat blogging. This was my weight Saturday morning, I think. So remaining somewhat stable, but it's going to change because, now I'm back in the place where they eat biltong and boerewors and dried wors and Pix anchovette and all of those, I would say comfort foods growing up. So expect the weight to increase, and then hopefully I have the discipline to make it go down again. Now, one thing I don't hope goes down is the JAFFE coin. In fact, the JAFFE coin went from $1.89 to, I'm not joking, it's actually about $2.89 at the moment. The JAFFE coin is rising because the JAFFE economy is expanding, and you are part of the JAFFE economy. In fact, one thing I've done now is I've really started to ramp up ways that you can take your JAFFE coin and actually use that JAFFE coin, whether it's a signed copy of my book, whether it's a sponsored room on Clubhouse or Twitter Spaces, whether it's actually sponsoring an episode of the show, 30 minutes with me, maybe an entire episode of the show dedicated to you and your company, or just the ability to ask your question live or a shout out on air. All of these opportunities are available to you, and they all accept JAFFE coin. We don't accept MasterCard. We don't accept Visa. We don't accept gold bullion or Krugerrands. Okay, maybe Krugerrands. We don't accept American Express. We accept the JAFFE. Tom says, I'm super clear. Well, that's great. Isn't that amazing? And by the way, the funny thing is I did the speed test, and the speed test said like 14 megabits per second, 14 or 15. At home, it's like 200, and yet somehow it's working. Let's not tempt fate, shall we? Let's just wish everybody from Friday through Sunday on Facebook and LinkedIn. There's so many people. If you see your name here, just trust me, I'm wishing you happy birthday. I might not say your name, but I'm looking at your name right now, and I will wish you happy birthday afterwards. So happy birthday to all of you. But now it's time to actually get into our seated soliloquy. And you're not going to have the sound effects and the backing tracks, but I hope you will be inspired by the soliloquy that is called inspiration. Where do people go for inspiration? I've used all mine up. Now, those words are actually from my guest today, Adam Pierno. Adam, fear not. The doctor of inspiration is in session. Consider this a complimentary therapy session with a money-back guarantee, which of course is payable in JAFFE coin. We're going to dig deep on what's troubling Adam, but I have to tell you, I was inspired by him and his statement to write today's soliloquy. Inspiration comes from many different places and perhaps hits you when you least expect it. When you've done almost 250 interviews, it's impossible not to be inspired. That's my not so secretive secret. Now, being an active listener also helps. But that said, there does need to be some method to the madness of codifying inspiration, a process that balances serendipity with rigor. Mine involves poorly multitasking by taking notes while scrolling through camera angles, rotating banners, and moderating comments to find one or more sound bites that I then use to prepare a 60-second highlight clip. Sometimes inspiration strikes through just one word or a phrase. Other times, it could be a unique angle or perspective that offers a fresh take on what is perhaps a conventional or traditional subject, like work from home, for example. For me, it boils down to the chemistry or connection between myself, my guest, and their particular focus. As many of you know, one of my favorite quotes is from photographer Diane Arbus. She said, "It's what I've never seen before that I recognize." This is what happens when you become really disciplined at the pursuit of inspiration. You have to chase it. You have to obsess on it. You also have to be consistent. It's both art and science as you blend curiosity and patience, restlessness and tenacity, inquisitiveness and endurance, texture and diversity. At the end of the day, inspiration is never about you. It's about others, or rather their effect on you. Inspiration is about the potential for action and is a catalyst for change. How to be better, how to be different, how to move from where you are today to where you could be tomorrow, and how you can pay it forward and utilize this fire in your belly, gut, head, or heart, or whatever, to inspire others in return. I hope today's show inspires Adam and all of you watching. And I wrote this soliloquy in the lounge in Doha over a 7-hour layover, exhausted out of my mind, and basically smelling my own breath because I was wearing a mask. But nonetheless, I was inspired, as you will be from my guest, Mr. Adam Pierno. Short and sweet, Adam Pierno has worked at agencies, in-house and independently, navigating thorny problems. He's written 2 business books and hosts the Strategy Inside Everything podcast, which looks at what drives creative thinkers. Also, he once played craps with Oscar winner Cuba Gooding Jr. Wait, what? He did what? Hold on a second. Let's get him on the show. Adam, you played craps with Cuba Gooding Jr.? What the hell?
I did. I actually forgot that I told you about that. Yes, I was in Vegas, and we were at the table. If you've ever played craps in Vegas, you know that sometimes the edges get blurry, and in this case, the edges were very blurry. And the guy that I was there with, one of my very best friends, is elbowing me. And at some point, he's trying to get my attention. And the person throwing the dice is, I'm looking, right at the felt. I'm focused on the point. I'm focused on the dice. And my friend is continues to elbow me to where I have to turn and say, what is going on with you? And he's like, look at what's happening. And there he is. Cuba Gooding Jr. is throwing the dice. He's on a crazy run, and nobody's acknowledging it because we all want to be cool. We were at the, I think it was the Hard Rock Casino. And finally, he throws the dice, and he actually said it. It was the delightful moment of the whole night. Under his breath, he says, "Show me the money."
Show me the money.
And the stick man says, "You're an Oscar winner, Mr. Gooding. Say it again." And then of course he starts yelling, "Show me the money," and the place is going absolutely insane. And we got to revel in that moment as if we were close personal friends. For that, probably 20 minutes, we were really close friends with Cuba.
Now, I don't know if you know this, but not only did you not remember that you told that to me, but we actually have a photo of that infamous evening. I mean, can you believe it? This was actually the time when you were throwing it on the roll. So
I probably was smiling.
Did you know that there was paparazzi there?
I didn't, but I should have known. They follow me around everywhere. He was just a beneficiary of my paparazzi, as you know.
Well, I love the fact that your bio actually already reveals your fun facts, but there are more fun facts about you, Adam. You are a deeply mysterious man. Because here's something else. And you're delusional as well, because you believe that your dog is number 1 in the world and all other dogs are just literally worse.
This is a fact. This has been proven by science. Yeah, this is not deniable, and any arguments that arrive in the chat are discounted. They are not true.
I mean, forget about the chat. You are taking on Sammy Jaffe, the greatest Morkie in the world. I mean,
as far as that breed goes, maybe the best, but my dog is an English cream retriever. Her name is Daisy. I tell my kids all the time, no matter how many dogs you have in your life, you need to understand. We've had 4 dogs as a family. This is the best dog you'll ever have in your life. She is so good. She's just the best.
It is, the last year and a half, people have certainly felt the connection between them and their pets. I mean, pet adoption and adoption of dogs at just record levels. But some people adopted pets. You did something else. You decided to write novels. Not just novels, but I think 1.5 novels.
I wrote one.
Now,
I did.
Now, wait a second. First of all, I know you'll get this, but do you know actually, who the body is that I put your face on?
I'm looking at it and it looks like James Caan is what I'm guessing.
It is Mr. Ernest Hemingway.
I thought you pulled something from Misery almost, looking at those shoulders.
No, but that's if you're a bad guest, you will see me over at the Piernos with a mallet in hand. But tell us about this in all seriousness. I mean, you wrote. Was this your first half or first 1.5 novels?
Yes, I've never written fiction, and it goes to the point, that question about inspiration that you used in your soliloquy and that I posed in our conversation before the show. This whole thing has been going on so long, but it was in the August, I think. Suddenly I was sitting there with my wife, and I think we had watched our 57th show in a row on Netflix or Amazon. And I went to get up, and an entire story came to me all at once. And I looked at my wife, and she said, "What's wrong?" She's like, "Something must have come over my face." And I said, an entire story just came to me. I said, "I don't know. I guess it's a novel." And she was like, "Oh no." She's like, "You're not going to write it." And I said, I think I am. And I wrote the entire story in about 40 days. And kind of the entire thing just poured out of me. That's it. It's called Negative Edge. It is about I was going through writer's block at the time. And I did a talk for, what's it called? I did a talk for someone about writer's block, and that talk, the talk I did was, I'm going to use writing this talk on writer's block to break my writer's block. And so writing how do you get through writer's block was my solution. And almost a week later, this story just popped into my head, fully formed, and I just had to corral it into a story that I could put on writing. It's on available on Wattpad now. I may move it to Kindle. I just wrote it for myself. I didn't write it for, to any end result. It was just, I needed to get my brain moving, I think.
So this is amazing to me, and it's very meta, right? It's art imitating life, or art becoming life, or in this case, life became art for you. The thing that was actually causing you to not write is the thing that inspired you to write.
Yes. Yeah, it's exactly it. And so the story has nothing to do with me or my lived experience at all, but is about a screenwriter who is also in writer's block and begins to suspect that somebody is keeping him blocked. He starts to kind of notice these edges around his life, and it turns out that he gets into this weird government agency that actually does that. They take really imaginative people and they try to block them because they are leading people who are interpreting their works to go out in the world and do crazy things, which is not a great thing. So you start to see after each chapter, there's a news break where you see somebody that's been inspired by one of his works, has gone out and committed a crime or done something wild out in the world. And so you get to learn, like, well, maybe he shouldn't be writing, or is this true? And so I got to have fun with it. And I didn't have to deal with a publisher that was telling me one way or the other which was the better way to go.
Well, it's okay. By the way, it's very cool. I started watching on the plane Tenet, and not giving anything away, but there is a concept there called inversion. So it's kind of interesting that it's the edges as well. It's the little bit of the blurring of what is real and what is maybe not real. And so it's not exactly sci-fi but it just touches on the question mark, and it's interesting.
That's what kept me writing, was it's close enough to truth, or not truth. It's close enough to news that you might read, that I thought, I'm just going to keep pushing and keep pushing. And honestly, it's like running a marathon. You just want to finish your first one, which I was nervous that I was going to lose the thread because I had been blocked for maybe 6 months. I'm a faucet. If I start writing, I can knock out 1,000 words of anything pretty quickly. So when it was blocked, it was really, I was worried. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know why. So when I had the story, I was really motivated to wake up early and do it before work. And try to write 30 minutes at least a day and try to keep the words moving.
So there's an interesting, I think, insight there, right? Which is, because probably most of us in life struggle to be inspired or find inspiration, right? Which is the one thing that you were saying, which is, your question to me was like, where do people go for inspiration? I've used all mine up.
Yeah.
But I think then there's a flip side that says, but when it comes, when it happens, when the floodgates open, whatever you do, don't slow down. Just double down, triple down, just go for it, and just put every second, every moment, every piece of energy in your life into it, because who knows when it's going to dry up and you'll be back to square one.
Yeah, and it's funny because I have also been guilty of getting an idea, getting inspired, and going and buying a URL and standing up a WordPress site that nothing ever happens with, So there's the flip side of it too, which is chasing too many crazy things. But knowing, I guess at this point in my life, I was able to say, oh no, this is one worth chasing down and worth investing the time in. The inspiration was leading me to an end point that I could see. Now, yeah, I mentioned it as 1.5 novels because a couple months later, I started another novel, and I still intend to finish that one. I think I wrote 8 chapters. I have an outline for about 16. So I'm roughly halfway through of the first draft. And something about that story said, pause, like take a break and walk away from this and come back to it in a little while. Like it didn't come as fully formed as the first story did. And I think that is a lesson I've learned from all those ideas that I've chased down half-baked and tried to turn them into something. And they didn't really form. They were not, my brain had not worked out what they should be yet at that point.
It's funny that you used the word chase, because that's what I wrote in the soliloquy as well. I don't know why. I just felt like, because I was thinking like, it's not just sitting passively waiting for that lightning to strike. Like you have to chase, you have to be like not a storm chaser. You have to be an inspiration chaser. You have to like go into the belly of the beast in order to kind of be overcome with it, and then, kind of just go with it.
Of course. I mean, there are people who write fiction for a living. They can't wait idly. Most of the work that I do has a deadline attached to it. There are clients, or there are customers, or there are businesses. There are people that are in need of the result of my thinking, my writing, my work. You can't just kind of sit at your desk and hope that the ideas come, or that the solution is going to land in your lap. It doesn't work that way. So when it's 9 to 5, you got to be able to turn it on and go chase that inspiration, figure out how you're going to get inspired on those days it doesn't come, figure out where to get ideas that you can build and borrow from. Because nobody says like, oh, you didn't have any ideas? Okay, well then I guess we'll try again in a couple of weeks. No, there's things on the line. It's got to be productive, and it's got to add up to something.
Well, now we're going to get into your non-fiction, your business for a second. But Martin Albarda, who wrote Zero with me, he said, seems to be working great from afar and not missing all the tech gear you usually have. So far, so good. I probably just jinxed it. Ironically, as soon as he wrote that, I saw the little Wi-Fi sign on the screen, and I was like, thanks, Martin. I really appreciate that, buddy. So let me ask you about that as we kind of, as we talk about it, writing a novel versus writing a business book. What are the similarities? What are the differences?
Yeesh. I did not have a thesis for Negative Edge. I had theses I had a thesis for Specific, which was my second book. I had an outline for my first book under Think It that I knew what the beats were that I wanted to hit. But I think the similarities are that you have an endpoint, but the way that you prove a theory or the support you need for a business book is just a hell of a lot different than what you're trying to say in a novel, which is you're trying to tell a compelling story in both, but I don't need to convince anybody of a thesis necessarily in fiction. And sometimes when an author tries too hard to do that, it's detrimental to the work when they have like a greater point that they're trying to shoehorn in or trying to make sure you get versus part of a meta narrative that people take away on their own. But for Specific, It was how well do you know your customer? You know, your very, very best, specific best customer drives your success. And the businesses that know them the best, whether there's 1 or 10 different groups of specific customers, those companies, those businesses are able to build brands that really connect to those people. And so the outline for that book and the work of that book is just finding the cases, finding the real juicy examples that bring it to life through different ways that brands express themselves and communicate directly to those customers.
Now, listen, you know a thing or two about brands and about branding. In addition to being, I know that you've already updated your LinkedIn profile to say, I'm guest number 246 on the show. It's what you lead with, but you're also AVP of Marketing Strategy at Arizona State University's Enterprise Marketing Hub. And when it comes to teaching and when it comes to understanding the evolution or the devolution, I should say, of marketing, one of the things that you said in your book is branding today takes a today mindset. What does that, tell us what that means.
Well, a lot of when you read, something that really frustrates me is when someone publishes an article about branding and they lean exclusively on like the Apple case study. Like, what are you doing? That is not helpful to anybody. Everybody knows that Apple's a great company, and you could pull out 100 stories about why Steve Jobs is a genius, but what am I supposed to do with that now? That was 30 years ago in a different climate, a different environment, a different context. So when I say that branding today takes a today mindset, you have to be thinking forward. You have to be thinking about the reality of what the world is like today. You can't just, not that this is reductive to say that Apple launched with a Super Bowl spot and that's all they did. But most brands, most small businesses that aspire to become big brands, you can't just go buy your way into it by buying a couple of magazine spreads and being on the Tonight Show. You know, in the 80s and 90s, it was kind of easy to cherry pick how you would do that. You know, the media you would need to buy. You could budget it out. Say, okay, if we do this for this duration, we will have this much awareness and therefore this many sales. It's not that way anymore. And especially for businesses that are operating in niches and serving against this fragmented media reality, you have to take a totally different mindset about how you're going to communicate your brand and how you're going to reach audiences.
I like what you're saying. And you know, by the way, just to go from the sublime to the ridiculous, Martin says, be careful with the word theses. For the auto caption, we're not going to just spell out the rest of what was included. I was thinking it, but you know, my dirty Dutchman friend and co-author actually wrote it.
I like it.
Which is why I'm not writing any more books with him, because he's a dirty old man.
There you go.
But you know, there are two other words that actually will autocorrect better than theses. And the words are crossover and context. So the today mindset, it's okay to talk about, you know, Steve Jobs coming back to Apple and simplifying the product line, right? He reduced it, he compressed it, he simplified it, but you still got to make it relevant and resonant for today, for 2021. You know, you've got to be able to understand the current market challenges, nuances, opportunities, etc.
Yes. Yeah. And you have to be willing to get into those details. It's easy to, especially if you're writing a business book, for example, it's kind of easy to cherry pick your examples and create the world as you want it to be by just saying, well, I'm going to only talk about these examples. Essentially, in the pages of this book, in the confines of my writing, these other things don't even need to be addressed. That's flawed thinking, but you could do it. That's not helpful to anybody. What I've loved about the people who have read specific, both of you, is that they've come back with feeling that it was helpful.
I read it twice, by the way.
You liar.
No, because you said both,
you're both
you said
people?
both of you, and I was like, yes. Are you counting me twice?
People have come back and said it is instructive and helpful, and I can relate it to the real world, which was the intent. I worked hard to find those examples and try to demonstrate that context through, if you keep going chapter by chapter, the examples get richer and richer.
So let me ask you to cite one or two of those examples, and I'll tell you that just a little bit of a tangent, but a relevant one. When I did a class or course in terms of creative writing and writing presentations, etc. And one of the things that's like the law of threes, I'm sure you know this, which is when you come up with examples, 1/3 of them are going to be the usual suspects, the Nikes, the Cokes, the Starbucks of the world. 1/3 of them has to go into, you've got to be able to segment and either go large to small, or domestic to global, or B2C and B2B. It's the ability to balance and create that well-rounded picture in order, if your book is meant to be universal. Otherwise it ends up being super niche, but you can't sell it to the masses if it's just if it's predictable and if it's just one-dimensional.
Yeah, 100%. And you have to be able to go broad to bring people in so they have something they can relate to, but then you do have to give them something different that they couldn't have found on every Business Insider article. That's not just another Bezos is a genius article, or whatever the broad example is. Nike's a good customer. I think when I give talks on the book, part of what's fun about Specific is I go into different aspects of how brands are represented in the world. So there's packaging design is a chapter, the brand experience is a chapter, the physical retail location is an example. So something that I point out in that section that I think gets people usually start nodding when we talk about this, or these are notes that I get from people when they read it, is pointing out the differences between the retail presence of a luxury brand, like Louis Vuitton, or a high-end boutique where somebody walks in and they're basically showing you like, this is $2,000 a square foot and we are not going to monetize any of it. We don't care. It's like a display of commerce power. We're just going to throw that away because you buy one pair of shoes and we're square, and you go in, there's 4 pairs of shoes in their whole space, and they spend time it's arrogance. It's arrogance, but it's really self-confidence. It's the ability, it is, it's very much, it is. I mean, it's arrogance and it's self-confidence, but it's basically says, listen, you need us more than we need you. Yes, it is what Pantera called in the 90s a vulgar display of power. It is like the Chanel experience. When you go into the Chanel store, you have to talk to somebody who is going to take a bag down off of the shelf or out of a drawer and present it to you for you to experience one of the higher end bags. That is a way to keep customers separated from the actual product, which is crazy in most retail environments now. The example I use as the counterpoint to that is Shoe Carnival, which is like, you walk in and they have every square inch of that store is monetized, or if there's not actually inventory piled up, there's a sign pointing to some inventory, something you could buy, or they're saying there's a coupon here, scan your phone right here and take 10% off. And that's beautiful as well because it's transactional. Get in and get out as quick as you can. Your kid needs new cleats. You can get them here for 35% off because you're a frequent customer. That's also okay because they own who they are. Like, I'm a Shoe Carnival customer because I have 2 growing kids, and every time their feet grow, I can't go and get new LeBrons for $180. I'd like to continue to pay my mortgage. So I have to, there's a trade-off.
And also, boxes on the floor, boxes piled up to the ceiling.
Exactly.
You really, value, it screams value. But, it's funny because the Barnes & Noble in Westport, where I live, massive, almost white elephant of real estate. And they were selling vinyl and toys and all these things in the big cafe. Now, what they've done is they closed it down and they've moved to a smaller, significantly, when I say significantly, I mean, I feel like it's 1/10 of the size of the floor plan. but right at the top of Main Street. Right at the top of Main Street. So now they've, in order to become part of the town square, they had to move to the town square and to actually be embedded in the community. A very, very different transition, within the same context of a brand that has to stay relevant.
Yep. And it's a different perspective and it's a different position as a retailer. So it's a different experience that they have to offer to do that. It's a different place they want to play in the role of the customers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Give me another example. I love these. An example, maybe an esoteric, because I know you're working now on a specific program for, which I love, by the way, because what you're doing now is you're actually trying to bring some of these, these universal lessons from major brands, best practices to smaller brands and businesses. So what's an example of a company that maybe none of us have ever heard of that has inspired you? Well,
I don't know if there's examples that nobody's ever heard of, but I do have some kind of fun examples with logos. One of the categories I looked at, and I spend a lot of time looking at this because I love fast food, but the fast food category, if you go back to the 50s, and the very first logo was the Golden Arches, the very first mass logo, I should say, and that red and yellow have sustained. And when you look at the entire category, every other brand ever since that has survived has followed that red and yellow color scheme. There's almost no examples that break out of it. But then when you stack up the entire category, it's red, yellow, red, yellow, red, yellow. Burger King injected a little blue in the 90s that they're trying to walk back now. But Shake Shack is this weird outlier where they have used black and green and some other colors, but essentially you surround that logo with all the red and yellow, and you can see right away there's something different about the experience you're about to have at Shake Shack than you would at any of these other places. And that includes places like Five Guys, which I would put in a similar tier from a pricing standpoint and from an expectation of the flavor you're going to get. That it's supposed to be this higher quality, upper echelon, casual dining experience versus the fast food. But just by that choice of color, they separated themselves out at Shake Shack from everything else. That's right. I just saw Ann just say Shake Shack as well. Yeah, that's the best. That's an interesting example of somebody that looked at the category and said, no, we're not going to do that same thing. But it puts brands in a weird position. Let's say you're a physical trainer, or let's say like you give swimming lessons in a local town. You have to represent somehow the category. You have to explain to people visually with your logo and your messaging that there's a pool involved, or there's waves, there's water involved. But it's really easy if you make that decision to look just like every other place that teaches kids to swim, for example. So how do you do it in a way that's compelling? You have to look at everything that's going on around you and then make a decision of where is the smart place to be different? Where can you plant your flag? And just those colors are different. Green isn't used a lot in food, especially in fast food. So it's interesting to see that Shake Shack has done it and run away with it.
And there's a lot that's interesting because green typically is not a color associated with burgers and fries and shakes, right? And so there is a specificity, if you will, about certainly about the color, but also about a name that involves something that they're really not known for, which is shakes, but it is specific, nonetheless. And then it just hit me, the red and yellow must signify ketchup and mustard. I think they. Or no.
No.
Or because did inspiration just strike me, or am I just exhausted?
I think people are looking for analogs, are looking for connections, but the connection is that red and yellow would be the most attention getting from the road. And then there's been some studies that say that red and yellow are stimulation. They stimulate appetite or something. I don't know if that's true. That seems like kind of pseudoscience to me. But the attention getting part, I definitely buy. But in Shake Shack's model, they don't need to pull people off the road. So they don't need to, they're not going to be on highways. They don't have to think about that. They're not a drive-through brand.
Okay, I'm going to double down on my delusion now and basically say that, the original colors of, did you know the original colors of mustard and ketchup were green, but they changed them with additives to red and yellow because they read your book and realized that they were the most attention getting from the road.
This is correct. Just up until last year, as we all know, ketchup was green. So I think it'd be hard to argue with that. That's for sure.
This is where big business news breaks. Right? Yeah. So Adam, you spoke about that. I want to go back to this idea of inspiration, right? This idea of, you said, where do people go for inspiration? I've used all mine up, and I used that to write the soliloquy for you because you inspired me. And I also found this quote, and you can try and guess who said it, but you'll probably be wrong unless, of course, your guess is anonymous, in which case you'd be right. Inspiration is the act of drawing up a chair to the writing desk. I love that. I mean, that just says, sometimes just showing up is enough, or just enough, or good enough. I mean, it's not everything, but at least it gets you in the game, or it gives you a fighting chance, to succeed, or to open up the floodgates.
It speaks to the challenge, I believe, that I was having, which is having a separation between the place that you write and the place that you need to be inspired versus the place that you take a break and disconnect your brain. When those are all blended and merged, your brain honestly doesn't know how it's supposed to react in different contexts if all the contexts get blended. So, working from home in the same space that I would frequently sit down and write made it a challenge for me to know when to turn it on and off for a little while. Since then, I've been able to recapture a little bit of context and make some changes, and working in one place, doing creative things not associated with my day job in another place, and then being away from both of those places when I'm having fun or being with my family and not thinking about work or not trying to dream up new ideas. Context is a big part of it, and that's the underlying theme of that quote, which is a beautiful quote, is time and place.
Now, I'm thinking of actually changing the quote to read Professor Adam Pierno, because I know what. Hang on a second. I'm just being fed some information that you are not, in fact, a professor. You just do their marketing.
I'm not a professor. So, I do have patches on my elbows, but no, I'm not a professor.
I mean, I'll tell you, the funny thing is I teach at West Virginia University. I'm an online instructor, and all my students call me professor, and I do not correct them.
Yeah, I like to call you professor. Yeah,
I like, but sometimes they call me Prof. Joe. But I always sign my replies to them by going Joe or Joseph. But you can call me Professor Pierno. I don't say that. But, would you like to become a professor?
I make my kids call me professor.
There you go. And I say to my kids, I don't care what you call me as long as you call me.
Yes, let's just keep talking. I'll be happy.
So, in the remaining time we have, I want to talk to you a little bit about this beautiful juxtaposition of things that I know that you wrestle with. This idea of simplicity, right, versus abundance of data and information overload. And so, you ask the question, don't you wish things were more simpler? And then that is juxtaposed against this idea of how much information is too much information. So I would love for you to kind of talk about this wrestling, right? This tension between what I would call simple but not simplistic, complex but not complicated.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's a great way to say it. There's an endless amount of information that we could get to if we're trying to make any decision. And all my job as a marketing strategist is trying to help people make decisions and trying to frame decisions in some kind of logic, some framework that helps them know this is the best decision now, and this is how we're going to know in the future if it's still working or if we should change course. But with endless streams of data or endless sources of information or endless opinions, in some cases, some are better and some are worse, it's hard to know. it is really hard to keep it simple. And it is hard to know when you have enough, when you have too much. And that I've been leaning towards this idea, which I borrowed from Margot Bloomstein, which is complete but not comprehensive. Like, we need enough information to tell the story all the way to the edges, but it doesn't have to be comprehensive that every single pixel has to be detailed out. And I need to give enough information to earn trust, but I don't have to give so much information that I bury people with evidence that I Googled every last article about this topic, or that I did every last piece of research that could be done on the topic. I just have to make the case that has the veracity that people know, okay, there's enough information to move forward. And it's hard to know where to stop with that sometimes.
So you have now, I mean, this is a perfect exchange of inspiration, because you've taken something that I've said, one of my quotes, which is this idea, or at least something that, maybe I stole it from someone, but I forgot. But this idea of simple but not simplistic, complex but not complicated. And now you've added complete but not comprehensive.
That's Margot Bloomstein. Yeah, I want to give her credit. I want to give Margot Bloomstein credit for that.
No, hold on. I'm just hearing that this was also Professor Adam Pierno. but then, okay, but now I will bring it back to you. I think there is something so elegant about this idea that all of this marketing mumbo jumbo, voodoo that you do so well, all of this stuff, it really just comes down to a framework for making decisions. Like,
yes,
that is so super succinct. And you know what? And that is maybe why Net Promoter Score works so well. And why, when we can distill it down to who do you, Edelman's trust barometer, who do you trust? Someone just like me.
Yes.
Because we don't know who to turn to. We don't know who to trust. It's too damn complicated. And it goes back to Apple, actually, when you open up the whole thing and you're like, where's the manual? Where's the instructions? It's intuitive. You just press a button and it works.
Yeah. It's funny you bring up NPS. It's a perfect example, because last year, or I guess 2 years ago, we did some research into experiences and how people in different categories, either as buyers or sellers, how they measure experiences and how they think about engaging with different organizations or different groups, even not all business related. And we were trying to seek out another form of measurement to either align with or maybe replace even NPS. And there's no simpler, it's not the best NPS, in my opinion, but it is the clearest. Like, people understand it. It's a very simple thing. And it's enough information for a business to say, okay, we're doing things right. They would recommend us. Great. Oh, we're doing poorly. They would not recommend us. We have to fix something. Where should we start? That's a great example of being just a smart framework for telling people directionally, you got to change something and something is clearly broken. It's a clean metric, which doesn't work for everybody, but it's a good starting point because it's easy to understand, and it's not so detailed that you have to read a 500-page book to get the sense of how it's calculated.
And just for the record, Steve Garfield, we know that Julian Edelman is looking for a new job after being cut by the Patriots, but he is not actually working on the next trust barometer, from what I hear. Although he could be
different Edelman.
I think he knows that, but I love. From now on, when I think of Edelman's trust barometer, I'm just seeing Julian Edelman. That's all I'm seeing.
I trust Julian Edelman when the game is on the line. That's for sure. If he comes out of retirement,
and he might, he'll probably end up at Tampa Bay.
I have a feeling.
But Adam, let's go back to this idea as well. When you talk about specific, when you talk about knowing your customer and being really super, narrow and clear about them, I almost see another form of specificity. I see the specificity of understanding not just who they are, but what makes them tick. And in some cases, just the ability to recognize that they're making decisions based on trusting a peer. I mean, that is a a sea change, because ultimately, if you know that to be true, you're probably not hitting them over the head with a Super Bowl spot.
Yeah, definitely not. In fact, you mentioned that I'm working on a course for small businesses, which is based on specific, it'll be called Specific for Small Businesses. And part of the work of the competitive audit, now when we do a competitive audit for a major brand, Joe, as you know, we do tons of research and we do these deep dive audits into these brands. But if you're a small business, is that really a great use of resources and time? Do you have the know-how to really dive into these? And furthermore, are those competitive brands, if you're a plumber in a small town with 10 competitors, are their brands even developed enough necessarily to go do that deep dive? So using reviews from Yelp and from Angie's List and from Google reviews, even going to Nextdoor and asking people or looking around to see how they're talking about the competitors. Understanding that, you get a really good sense of how people choose, and then the expectations they had of a brand versus what they got. So in the case of a plumber, it might be, well, they said 24-hour easy service, but they couldn't be booked for 48 hours. That just breaks the brand for them. So knowing what it is, what's the key piece that makes people tick and how they choose. And then if you fall down on that promise that you don't get that NPS, you don't get that referral, you don't get that positive review, you don't get that outcome because you didn't meet this expectation that maybe you thought was bullet point 8, but was the most important piece to your specific customer, which is, I have a leak and I need someone here now. And you said you could be here within one day and you didn't. So you're out.
So I think in many respects, this almost comes full circle when we think about how we've oversimplified marketing down to one thing, which is getting somebody to buy something, right? It is still the sales Bible 101. Nothing happens until somebody makes a sale. But there's so much that led up until that point, and there's so much that happens after that point. And we don't have the patience often, and we don't have the discipline, and we don't have the ability to kind of color in, connect the dots and color in between the lines. I would love for you to kind of just comment on that, but then also just in the few moments we have left, talk a little bit about what it is to be marketing, to be doing the marketing, for a school, and how that has changed and how that will, probably change, using your own lens of understanding the target audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can combine both of those things into one thread, actually, because it seems like that focus on conversion has made people forget about, the AIDA model, and forget about the idea that without awareness, you can't be considered. You can't go deeper towards a conversion. And if you are selling something like trousers on Instagram, you might be able to get someone to see one picture and click and get, have your performance marketer high five the person at the next desk. But if you're selling something like a car or an education, it is hard to get someone who's never heard of the degree you offer or the unit within the university even to just commit and apply to that school or apply for that program. And so there is a tension that marketing will have to reckon with and advertising will have to reckon with of laddering back up to that awareness. Now, part of the challenge, Joe, we already talked about is if media has become so fragmented, it's not as easy to get that mass awareness or to increase that awareness. So how are you able to do it? At ASU and the marketing that I am lucky to do here, we have high awareness and we're creating programs that are just unbelievable. So a lot of the work we're doing, you're part of the Mars rover mission and you're part of, you're creating the first global futures laboratory focused on inviting outsiders in to help solve challenges related to climate. We're doing things that have never been done before. And so each of those things is an opportunity to get attention that you can convert into an understanding, a perception, along with awareness of the university that helps communicate what the university stands for and how it's different just by virtue of having programs that nobody else has, or even approaching education from a way that is different from other universities, where it's about casting the widest availability for education. Our charter is all about access and making education as available to as many people as we can reach, and finding ways to help them succeed, which is a lot different than some of the exclusive schools that present education as a scarcity, as a something exclusive, something for the few. At ASU, we're a public institution. We want education to be accessible. We want more people to learn, and we want the things that we do learn and the knowledge that we generate to be shared back out, because we want to reach more people with that knowledge to enrich the communities we serve. And so that's a privilege, and one fuels the other, and that's how it should work. That's how marketing should work. That the real purpose of the business is fueling the marketing, and they're truly related, versus being something over here that came out of a PR statement that was used to generate news in the 24-hour cycle.
It really does show that at the end of the day, the best practice, the next practice, the solution is about blending, the general and the specific. The vertical and the horizontal. It really is, a matrix that comes together. And sometimes you can go deep and super, super specific in terms of the actual class, the course, a typical lesson, a day in the life. But then sometimes you need to be able to it's almost like zooming in and zooming out to understand where you are and what makes the institution tick and what else is going on. I mean, I even remember going and looking at colleges and looking at BU and I forget the specific example, but our tour guide said, do you know what this place is or what happened here? And I think it's where they, split the atom or did something like that. But again, it's like it's going back in the past to understand you're here to determine and take care of your future, but it helps to understand the grounding, the heritage, the history, the foundation. Yes. And when the past and the future come together, they come together clearly at one point, and that point is the present. Absolutely.
And especially with people, it's not 18-year-old students are not the only people that are coming to learn. You're talking to people that want to learn across a lifespan, across a lifetime now. So it is about creating that context for them, where you show them what has been done and showing them what is possible should they plug into this and figure out how the best way they can move forward, and how ASU is a place for them to execute that and to live that promise.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that is possible is the book Specific. And I want you specifically to go and purchase a copy of this. I've already pasted a link to the book page on Amazon. So please go ahead and buy Specific: How Brands Draw Inspiration from a World That Doesn't Want Any More. So stop overcomplicating it. Get back to basics, zoom in order to zoom out, in order to be able to create a much better, well-rounded picture. Subscribe to Adam's podcast, The Strategy Inside Everything. Follow him on the Twitter. Do not follow him on all the other platforms, maybe except for LinkedIn, because he is a Twitter guy. He's all about the Twitter. Pretty much. Right?
Yes, sir. Yeah. That is correct.
And I think Twitter is coming back in a big, big way, post-election, because Twitter Spaces and it seems like all the cool kids and me are now hanging out on Twitter.
I count you as one of the cool kids, but you're like that hello fellow kids guy,
All the cool kids led by Professor Adam Pierno and me is what I was trying to say. Adam, I hope this was inspiring. I hope you enjoyed it. You certainly inspired me. My first show back in the homeland, in the motherland, quite specifically the land of mother. I'm now going to go check in the room next door to see if she's fallen asleep. And don't take it personally if she has, but we will find out soon enough. But just wish you well, especially on completing the other half of the novel.
As soon as the course is done, I'll be back in fiction world. But Joe, it's been a pleasure, and I'm glad we made it through. The Wi-Fi held up. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I saw a couple of little parts when it was acting a little bit iffy. But as I said, the most exciting part of the new book is going to be the fact that I've heard. Hold on, I've heard that it's going to be endorsed by.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
Yeah. And I will be back tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.